Good morning students. Today I am going to start a new chapter which is query and functions in MySQL. This is chapter number 10 in your book, and the topic that I am going to present today is the select statement. So let's get started. The retrieval of data is an essential requirement in any database management system. MySQL provides select statement and a set of operators to retrieve data from tables. And this process of retrieving data from tables is also known as querying. Now see the general syntax of the select statement. It starts with the word select followed by star or the list of columns. If you choose to retrieve the data from all the columns of a table, then opt for the star operator. Or else, if you wish to retrieve the data from only specific columns of a table, then do not opt for the star operator. Instead, specify the list of the columns. Then come to the next line. Specify the table name after the from word. If you wish to retrieve data from multiple tables, specify all the table names separated by commas. Again come to the next line. There is a where clause. In this clause, you can set a predefined condition before retrieving any data from a table. Then come to the next line. If you wish to retrieve the data from tables from a certain category, then use the group by clause followed by the list of columns that you wish to categorize. And in the last line, see the order by clause. The order by clause helps you to retrieve data from tables in ascending or descending order of a column, and that can be done by specifying the columns that you wish to sort in ascending or descending order just after the order by, and each of these columns has to be separated by a comma. Now in the given syntax of the select statement, the where clause, the group by clause, and the order by clause are optional. That means we will use these clauses only when it is required. As a result, the syntax is select star oblique the set of columns from the table name or the set of table names, then where followed by the expression which is the condition, then you have the group by clause specifying the list of the columns, and at the end the order by clause specifying the list of columns which you wish to sort it in ascending or descending order. Now let me create a table by the name student. So it starts with create table student, then in the next line inside the body of this table called student, I will declare 3 columns, that is SID, SNAME and SCT, and each of these columns have a data type known as varchar to accept only letters, special characters or numbers as values. Now for the column called SID with varchar as the data type, the size defined is 5. That means this column called SID can accept values with not more than 5 characters. Then similarly for the next column SNAME with varchar as the data type, the size defined is 15. So this column can accept values not with size not more than 15 characters. And lastly, for the column SCT with data type as varchar, the size defined is 20. That means the values of this column, that is SCT, cannot accept more than 20 characters. Now out of these three columns, that is SID, SNAME and SCT, I don't want the column called SID to contain duplicate values. And how can we prevent this column SID to contain duplicate values? So in order to prevent this column called SID to contain duplicate values, you have to set this column SID as a primary key, and that is shown here. At first, specify the word constraint, then give the name of the constraint. Now since it's a primary key constraint for the table student, I just simply write it as student pk as the constraint name. Then just after that, now I'm going to specify this column SID as a primary key. So for that, at first we have to write the word primary key, then within bracket you have to specify the name of the column that which you wish to set a primary key. And since I'm going to specify the column called SID as the primary key, that's why I'm going to put SID here within bracket. And just after this, close the body of this table with a closing bracket and a semicolon. And this creates the following table with three columns or three attributes: SID, SNAME and SCT, with the first column SID being a primary key. As a result, this column cannot accept duplicate values. All the values in this column called SID should be distinct or unique. Now initially, this table called student will be entirely blank. That is, it will not contain any data. Now let me insert 5 records into this table student. The first record is S10 Arpita and Bangalore, and I have inserted that record into this table with the statement insert into student values S10 Arpita and Bangalore. Now note that each of these values, that is S10 Arpita and Bangalore, they are enclosed within quotations. This is because these values belong to the columns known as SID, SNAME and SCT, and each of these columns have the data type varchar. Now remember, for data type as varchar, the column associated with it should contain values that should be enclosed within quotation in the insert statement. Now just after inserting the first record, I insert the second record, that is S20 Tushar and Aurangabad, using the second insert statement. As a result, you can see the second record S20 Tushar Aurangabad getting inserted into the table just after the first record. Now let me insert the third record, that is S30 Astik and Durgapur, using the same insert statement. As a result, you can see the record S30 Astik and Durgapur getting inserted into the table student just after the first two records, that is the record of Arpita and the record of Tushar. Then comes the fourth record, that is S40 Hansika and Cochin, getting inserted into this table just after the first three records belonging to the students Arpita, Tushar and Astik. And at the end, the fifth record S50 Anumita and Bhopal getting inserted into the table after the first four records connected with the students Arpita, Tushar, Astik and Hansika. As a result, 5 records are being inserted into the table student. Now see the SID column of this table known as student. The SID column contains values which are unique or distinct. Let me highlight these values. If you see each of these values for this column called SID, there is no duplication. That is, there are no duplicate values for this column called SID. And each of these values are unique. They are distinct. But if you wish to insert any duplicate values for this column called SID, then MySQL will show an error message. Say for example, you have inserted the value S30 for this column called SID before. Now again, if you wish to insert the same value S30 for this column called SID after the last record, then MySQL will produce an error message. It will say that duplicate values are not allowed for the column called SID. This is because this column SID has already been set as a primary key when the table has been created. And that you can see here, the column called SID has been set as a primary key when this table student has been created. Now read this question. Write a query to display all the records of the student table. Now if you wish to display all the records of the student table, then write the query as select star from student followed by semicolon. Write the query as select star from student followed by semicolon if you wish to display all the records of the student table. And the star here will retrieve the values of all the columns of the table student. That is, it's going to retrieve the values S10, S20, S30, S40 and S50 for the column called SID. Then the values Arpita, Tushar, Astik, Hansika and Anumita for the column S name, and the values Bangalore, Aurangabad, Durgapur, Cochin and Bhopal for the column S city. As a result, using the star operator, the values of each of the columns SID, S name and S city shall be retrieved from the table student. And the output we see is the table getting displayed exactly like this. Now if you wish to write a query to display 3 records of the student table, okay, that is, if you wish to display only 3 records of the student table, then write the query as select star from student, then set the limit to 3 followed by semicolon, and the query becomes select star from student limit 3 followed by semicolon. As a result, you can see that in the output table you can see only 3 records. That is the first record S10 corresponding to the student Arpita, the second record S20 corresponding to the student Tushar, and the third record of S30 corresponding to the student Astik. Now all of you read this question. It says write a query to display the ID and names of all the students from the student table. Now this query says that you are asked to retrieve the values of only 2 columns, that is ID and names, from the table student. And so for that you have to write the query as like this: select SID, SName from student followed by a semicolon. Here SID is the column representing the ID and SName is the column representing the names of the students. And on executing this query, you can see only two columns, that is SID and SName, getting displayed in the output for the table student. Now let me include these two records of Hansika and Anumita. Now on including these two records, you have in total 5 records from this table student getting displayed, and the columns are SID and SName. Now check this query. Read the question. It says write a query to display 4 records of ID and names of students from the student table. So you're going to write the query as select SID, SName from student limit 4. This is because the question is asking you to display only 4 records corresponding to the columns ID and name of the table student, and that's why I set the limit to 4. And on doing that, you can see the table getting displayed exactly like this in the output, and the last row corresponding to the student Anumita has been deleted. And this was present in the previous query where there was no limit defined, because in this query we were asked to display the ID and names of all the students from the student table, and since it includes all the students, the student Anumita was also included. But in this query you are asked to display only the 4 records of IDs and names of the student table. That's why I set the limit as 4, and on doing that, the last record corresponding to the student Anumita has been deleted. So with this I end my presentation here. That's all for today.